Hello, Sharif here, and I want to spend a few minutes talking to you about my upcoming webinar and to talk to you about the outline of it, but also talk to you about the name change for it. My original title was The Dalai Lama's Spiritual Revolution, Love, Inclusivity, and Compassion as Tools for Societal Change. A couple of people got back with me and said, first of all, that's a mouthful. Second of all, they had the mistaken notion that I was really going to be talking about the Dalai Lama and not about what I've been talking about, which is the nature of societal transformation. My new working title is The Dream of the Butterfly. We are living inside of the caterpillar right now, but our imaginal cells, the cells that say that we are really a butterfly, are coming forth right now, and it's time for that to grow and evolve. I have a really interesting quote from Martin Luther King, who said, "If we're to go forward, we must go back and rediscover those precious values, that all reality hinges on moral foundations, and that all reality has spiritual controls." So that's what I'm going to be talking about. That, to me, is the spiritual revolution. So let me walk through the outline. Part of the outline is actually starting with the Dalai Lama and looking at how his life and my life are almost mirror opposites of each other, but in a very interesting way. We come together, we converge how we are seeing each other and how we see ourselves, etc. I'll spend a little bit of time talking about the world's needs, what I'm talking about, I'm calling the path of destiny. And as most of you know, I spent almost no time talking about the current president of the United States. But I'm going to change that. I'm going to talk about, as part of our path of destiny, what does activism look like in the age of Trump? So this will be my first coherent talk about what Donald Trump means to us and what we are to be doing in this age of Trump. I'm going to talk about 7 liberations, 7 ways that humanity can liberate itself, liberate each other, and liberate our own destiny. Number 1 is the liberation of our consciousness. Number 2 is the liberation of our culture and our behaviors. Number 3 is the liberation of our identity. And that's a very big one. A lot of the problems that we have in our society nowadays are really identity problems. What does it mean for me to be a human being on this planet at this time? Next, number 4 is the liberation of our wisdom. We are getting increasingly intelligent about technology, but our wisdom hasn't kept pace with that. Number 5 is the liberation of our nobility, and by nobility I don't mean I have to start wearing a crown and calling myself a king or an earl or a duke or anything. But nobility means how we act in the world from the core of our essential being. How do we liberate ourselves from our own creations? How do we liberate ourselves from the internet? How do we liberate ourselves from our corporations? So instead of being controlled by them, we're the ones that are controlling our creations. And finally, how do we liberate the earth? How do we actually honor our mother instead of trying to enslave her? When we start looking at the dream of the butterfly, we're looking at a whole new level of humanity. Now, what I mean by that, I pay attention to being in a city like most cities nowadays, and I can see homeless people in the city. And there are hundreds, maybe thousands of well-meaning people in this city who are trying to provide resources, trying to provide food, shelter, etc. for this homeless population. And that's a good thing. That's the exercise of compassion. And my question is, who is elevating our consciousness to the point where homelessness is something that simply becomes impossible? How do we elevate our consciousness so that that person gets more than a warm blanket, more than a hot meal, that actually they become an active human being in an active 21st century? A 21st century where people do a lot more than just sit around and watch television. So this dream of the butterfly, of us emerging from our chrysalis, I think there's a way that we're going to be doing the emerging, and that's the last part that I'll be talking about in my 90-minute webinar. What are the first steps of global transformation? How do we take those steps together? These steps are not based on individuality. We have to be working together on all of this, and I'll be discussing how we all work together. As I told you before, the webinar is free, and I'd like to see as many people as possible signing up for it. Given the hour that it's going to start at 7 o'clock Pacific time, I've already had a number of people on the East Coast time saying that they'll be looking at it the next day via recording. That's fine, but you still have to sign up for it if you want to get the recording. I look forward to seeing as many of us as possible on this journey, and I look forward to all of our next steps together. Thank you.